Well, hey, it's National Day of Prayer again. If you are interested in participating in National Day of Prayer, I encourage your family to pray anytime through the course of the day. But there is an event that is really sponsored by the believers in town. It's from 5:45 to 6:30 at the hospital parking lot. It's just a drive-in. You won't leave your car. They'll guide you through prayer. So take advantage of that if you'd like to participate. If not, take some time today and just pray. Pray for your leaders. Pray for the church. Pray for the future. Pray for God's bigger story outside the smaller story. Well, again, it's Family Fun Week. Don Feely kind of kicked it off and lit the match, and so we are participating with that. And so it is Try Something New Thursday. So I thought, I don't normally wear red. It's just not my color scheme. So I just thought I found this shirt. So I put it on and it's kind of itchy, but I thought I'd just try something new. Lessons from the life of Joseph. Chapter 37, verses 1 through 11. Jealousy was established. 37:12 through 36. Joseph was sold. In 39, 1 through 23, Joseph is in Potiphar's house. Now Joseph finds himself in prison, sold by his family, enslaved. Now he's unjustly in prison. Get this, from 17 years old on, all Joseph knew was being dealt an unlucky hand. That was all his life from 17 on. Yet Joseph had this rare ethic that enabled him to live above the rap sheet placed on him by others. He never played the victim mentality. He worked hard wherever he went. He always gained the respect and the admiration of those he worked under. And now we're ready for chapter 40, verses 1 through 23. Again, take some time just to read it. If you're listening to this as an individual, read it as an individual. If you're listening as a family, take some time, read these 23 verses of chapter 40. And I think you'll get a lot more out of what we kind of expose in the passage. So read that right now. Dreams have always been a part of Joseph's story. He gets dreams. He interprets dreams, and eventually the dreams Joseph has or he interprets turn out exactly the way he says they will. Now, wherever Joseph goes, he's given organizational leadership. He's just administratively gifted. And prison is no different. Two men are placed under his care. They're men of highly esteemed positions in Pharaoh's household. One is a cupbearer, which sounds kind of crazy, but you need somebody to taste what you're going to drink before you drink it so that you're not poisoned. So it's a high-ranking position. And then there's a baker. And again, you got to have a trusted baker. You don't want somebody poisoning the food bank. Each one of these men has a dream. They're in prison. They're under Joseph's care. They come to Joseph. First, the cupbearer's dream. Well, Joseph analyzes the dream. Easy. He says, the Pharaoh will restore you to your original position in 3 days. And then Joseph kind of slides in by the way, when you get back into your high standing with the Pharaoh, could you remember me? I'll wash your hand, you wash my hand type of a thing. Second, the baker's dream. Now, the baker has heard him interpret the cupbearer's dream, and so I'm thinking he's probably excited that he's going to get a favorable interpretation as well. But as Joseph analyzes his dream, he says, your dream, 3 days you'll be hanged and birds will eat your flesh. I'm sure his reaction was, I would like the cupbearer's dream. 3 days later, it unfolds exactly how Joseph said it would happen. The cupbearer chose, though, once he returned back to his place of being highly esteemed, well, he kept the info to himself. He buried it. For 2 years, he sat on that information. But once again, though, Joseph, even though he doesn't get a fair shake, he remains unoffendable. In Proverbs chapter 18, verse 19, it says this. It says, "A brother offended is harder to be won than a strong city." I mean, once you're offended, game over. You just are kind of lost in the deal. You just start having a pity party. All the world is against you. But he says a brother offended is harder to be won than a strong city. Somehow Joseph understood that living offended would do him no good. You think about it, he could justifiably hold a grudge against a lot of people. He could have held a grudge against his brothers. He could have held a grudge against the traders who sold him, who bought him from the brothers, sold him to Egypt. He could have held a grudge against Potiphar, against Potiphar's wife. He could have held a grudge against the cupbearer. But hey, truth be told, where does our grudge that we hold, where does it center on? It really centers on God, because God's ultimately the one who controls everything, right? God, how could you allow this? And somehow Joseph held no grudge against the Lord. But you know what I think in our life, what we see it all the time, the one that gets most of our disdain for all the circumstances that we think are unnecessary, that are unjust, well, it's God. We give him the full brunt of our anger. If God loved me, he wouldn't let this happen to me. Let me ask you a question. What are you ultimately blaming God for right now? You're blaming him for the virus? You're blaming him for your circumstances? You're blaming him for time lost? Or maybe a question for you is, what have you blamed God for in your past? Here's what we're going to see over and over as we begin to examine Joseph's life, is that God has allowed Joseph to go through whatever he goes through because God is preparing him for a greater good. But God does the same thing in us. God has allowed you, me, to go through whatever it is for a greater good. So here's the application. Be unoffendable. Stop blaming God and look at the opportunity in the circumstances that he has dealt you. Well, good discussion question. What do you ultimately blame God for? What have you blamed God for? Have a great day of prayer. Spend some time. Get it by yourself. You don't have to take a long time, but just spend some time by yourself and just pray for those you love and pray for the circumstances that God would have his way in the midst of this, and God would direct us from our eyes to all the circumstances to our vertical relationship with him. God is orchestrating a bigger story outside of this. So have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. I think it's Fuzzy Friend Day. So we'll see you on Friday.